Hi everybody, welcome to School of Scarlett. Today we're going to be talking about how to manifest your dream job. So if you're feeling exhausted, tired, you feel like you are lacking creativity, lacking freedom in your life, and you're wanting to exit the 9-to-5 rat race, this video is for you. So I'm going to be sharing here in this video with real life examples of my own life, how I've done this time and time again. It is actually very easy to manifest your dream job, but I'm going to be going into a lot of different times I've done this so that you can see the pointers for yourself. You really only have to choose one way to do this. You don't have to take all of these different pointers and use them for yourself. So stay tuned to the very end so that you get the whole picture of how I did this exactly. So I want to share with you a little bit about my background to kind of share with you how this goes. I've ultimately manifested my dream job, and I want to share with you the steps it took along the way. You can simply do some of these things in your own life now, and so I want you to drop in the comments when you hear something that you want to start doing in your own life. Drop in the comments what it is. Okay, so I want to share with you kind of going back in time when I started working. So I started working when I was 15 years old. I started working in Sonic, and it was kind of this job. It was my first job that, really provided me with money. It provided me with the money that I could use to buy the clothes I wanted, do the things I wanted. It ultimately gave me freedom of choice in the things I could buy, and freedom in terms of going and doing things with my friends and that sort of thing. So we want to think, and we want to, especially if you're watching this video, we want to think that 9-to-5 jobs are bad, that they don't allow us anything. But truly, they do allow some sort of freedoms. If we look at this, in terms of our first jobs and things like that, they really did open up our world for us. So one of the main pointers I want you to keep in mind in manifesting your dream job is to be grateful. Be grateful for what you have now. If you do have a job now, see what it is in that job that you are grateful for. Maybe it's really hard to find something to be grateful for, and I can remember there was jobs I had that literally were draining me, and I couldn't find anything good about them other than I enjoyed, talking to some of my coworkers. They became my friends. And so maybe it's that. There was a job at one point that I really loved, but at another point I totally hated. And the only thing I could find about that job that I loved is that during lunch I got to walk around campus, and I got to go to the coffee shops or out to lunch, and it was just a nice little escape, within that job. But it provided me that. If I hadn't been working there, I wouldn't be doing that. So look at your job now and see what it is that it provides you that you can be grateful for now, because everything will kind of bloom out of that. If we are in this kind of frequency or vibration that we hate our job, we're in this bad mood all the time, and we can't find anything good about our current situation, it's going to be really hard to manifest. So I want you to connect with what it is that you are grateful for. Okay, so moving forward, I left that job because it was just the natural course of that job to find a different job. And I found a much higher paying job that, again, provided me freedom of earning more. And with that job, I purchased my first car. And of course, that's more freedom. That's more liberties. And so for me, that was a great thing. And it provided me more responsibility. I felt, more in the role of like I'm moving up in my career in some way. I could see opportunities popping up, things like that. But at some point that job shifted, and I really began to hate that job. So I had to be in a cubicle the majority of the time. It was a gray padded cubicle with no outside windows. It had fluorescent lighting that would turn on and off depending if people were walking around. If people stopped walking, the lights would turn off, and it was just really soul crushing. I would hear the same conversations over and over again. It was very mundane. Nothing was really ever happening in there, and it really felt like I was just watching the clock tick until it was time for me to leave. And by the time I got home after a long commute, I really only had like an hour to myself. And in that hour, I pretty much made dinner, cooked for myself, had a nice bath, and went to sleep. And so there wasn't much outside of work for me. And it always seemed like I was just, waiting for it to be the weekend. And the weekend would come, and, Saturday would be great, but then Sunday there would be this dread of, having to go back on Monday. So it just became not what I wanted for myself. So I began to imagine, while I was still working there, the type of job that I would want. So I began to imagine myself doing something that was more along the lines of the profession that I wanted to do. At the time I was in college, and I wanted to work more in social work, more in psychology, something to do with more of being in service to others. And so I imagined this job, and even during the work hours, sometimes I would, get on my computer and start looking for other job postings. And, you probably weren't supposed to do that, but I did it anyway because that's where my soul was leading me to. So sometimes you're going to have to break the rules a little bit. And so I found some jobs I wanted to apply to. I applied and I easily got those jobs. So it all started with me being a little bit unhappy in that job to where now it opened up like, what do I want to do now? So when you have that feeling, go with it. Explore your options, explore your imagination. If there are no options, what do you want to create for yourself? You may not see a job out there, but if you begin to imagine it, visualize it, eventually that right job will pop up somewhere. So I ended up in a job that I thought that I loved, and I did that job for a while. I really did love it for a while, and after a while, what ended up happening was I got pregnant. And so I had my daughter, and it was time to go back to work. So I was holding my daughter. I think she was 2 weeks old, and I can remember vividly looking in the mirror, holding her. She was tiny, like this small. And I thought to myself, how am I going to leave her in daycare while I go work? It didn't seem natural to me. My heart was aching. It didn't seem like this was what I needed to be doing. So I got on the phone with my employer and I let them know that I didn't feel comfortable with going back to work with my daughter being so young. What were some other options? At the time, there really wasn't any other options, but because I had that yearning, because I had, taken that step to reach out and see what they could do, they wanted to keep me. So they had me switch my schedule to where I was working nights. And so instead of working days, I worked nights, and I was able to be home with my daughter during the daytime. And so it doesn't seem like a big, huge leap, but it is a shift that allows for more freedom. Now I was able to really connect and have time with my daughter during the day. And I really had an amazing time raising my daughter as when she was young. We did so many different activities. We did so much fun things. And so this was actually a blessing for me to have done that. So sometimes you're going to have to see where you can adjust, even where you're working at now. Is there anything that you can kind of shift around to be able to experience what you want in your reality now? Maybe there is something within your job that you can do now. Maybe you can ask for a different schedule. Maybe you can ask to work from home. Maybe there's something that you can do to kind of move that around. So some time passed, and I ended up having to move to another state. And when I moved to another state, I had to take a different job. And this was your regular 9-to-5 job. But I knew even before I was looking for jobs, there was a short time I was unemployed while I was looking for jobs, that this time I wanted a job that would allow me to work from home, because I wanted to be able to be home with my daughter, and I wanted to be able to continue to do the activities and the fun things that we were doing. So I only applied to jobs that allowed me to work from home. So now I had this boundary. Now I had this sort of, identity that I wasn't going to go back to something different. I was only going to work at jobs that allowed me to work from home. So my identity shifted now to there's no other reality other than what I want now, which is to work from home. So I applied to maybe 3 different work from home jobs, and I got one. And so I began working in this work from home job, and it was perfect for me. It was perfect for my daughter, and I was able to be home. And so it worked out very well. So I continued to work in these kind of work from home jobs for a while, and they worked out wonderfully. At some point, I moved back to where I originally came from, and there was a management role. Someone had left the management of the place I was working at that allowed me to work from home. And I didn't even apply for the job. I didn't do anything to try to get that job. When I was, when they reached out to me to see if I wanted to have that management position, I was really surprised, and I didn't understand why I was being, offered this position, because I really thought I was doing the bare minimum. So I flat out asked, why is it that you're choosing me for this position? I don't have the management experience. I know that there's better qualified people with even higher degrees than I do. Why me? And my supervisor of that time flat out told me, it's because you're always the first one to volunteer to do something. You're always the first one to teach someone something new. You're always the first one to, do something when we need help. And I thought to myself, that's really funny, because I really always thought that I was doing the bare minimum. And this is when it clicked to me that no matter what job you're in, if you're in service of others, if you're trying to do your best and you're really in service of others, you will expand and grow. You will manifest into that next position. So I've heard many stories where there was like an assistant, and the assistant was like a go-getter and would volunteer, would do these things for their boss, until one day they became partners with their boss. And how does this happen? This happens with being in service of others. It's not about being grumpy. It's not about sitting back and just visualizing all the time or doing these sorts of things. It's truly about doing. When we get to doing, we begin manifesting. So one of the things that, I really want to point at here is to be in service of others. And just simply doing that, you will be qualified. Where you thought you couldn't be qualified because you didn't have the degree, because you didn't have the experience, because you didn't have the connections, or whatever it happens to be, you being in service of others, you having that big heart, you doing these things will actually qualify you to where those qualifications, they don't exist for you. So for me, this happened time and time again, that I would begin to be qualified for jobs that most people simply would never be able to be qualified for in my position. So later I had a move that I moved to a different town, and in that town I wanted to get a job there, and I showed up and I interviewed for a job. It was a teaching job. I wanted to try something a little bit different. I had been working with kids, and this is a little bit before the management position, but anyhow, I showed up there and I got the job right away. Also because I knew that I wanted to work there. I knew that this was for me. And before I left, I had already gotten that job. So it was easy. I bought the house. I didn't wait till I had a job to move to this place. I bought the house. I did everything kind of backwards, just knowing that there was no other way. I was going to get a job. So sometimes we hold ourselves back waiting for the perfect time to move, to have a different job, to do this or that. There is no perfect time. There never will be a perfect time. You have to move when your heart says it's so. And all those other things will begin to align as you begin to align. So that's another example of how I did something, and kind of jumped the gun, knowing though that I was going to get that job. I was going to get the job that I needed that was perfect for me. I didn't know what it would be, but I would get it. And so I showed up and I got that job. So this is kind of bringing me into another job that I was qualified for that I shouldn't have been qualified for. So I was working at a Head Start center teaching, and I got some information about, that there was job openings at the school district. Now, the school district paid a lot more than the Head Start center, but you did need to have a teacher certification in Texas or in any state here in the United States. I didn't have a teacher certification. I only had a bachelor's degree in psychology, which wasn't education or anything like that. And at the time, because they were so desperate for teachers, they went ahead and hired me, even without my teacher certification, even without me having begun a teacher certification program. And they hired me into that position. So where it seems like it would have been impossible because I didn't have the qualifications, there's always a way. So I got in there without any kind of certification, anything, at the salary that I wanted. And so that's just another example to you that you don't have to be qualified, you just have to be aligned. And so I did that job for a while, and I kind of moved around. Another thing about me is that when jobs no longer align to me, I leave them. I don't stay in a job for 20, 40 years like we used to see. People used to be able to do that, but the way that things are now, we're moving very quickly. And when something doesn't align, it's time to get out of it. It's time to move on to the next thing. That is your sign that you're ready to move on to the next thing. And the only way to make space for the next thing is to really make space for it. Either you get fired or you leave the job or something, but you're going to have to make a step in order to make room for the next thing that comes in. So at some point, I really had felt that I had kind of exhausted everything in terms of social work, psychology, teaching. Like, I had been working for a long time in a lot of different areas of these jobs. And so I really felt like I was done. And I was, maybe looking around for jobs. And I did see that there was a job for working in counseling, and counseling people with serious mental illness. And I thought, I've never worked with the population of serious mental illness. I thought, that might be something that I want to work in and get some experience in and feel what that's like. And so at that point, I went ahead and applied for the job. I wasn't qualified for the job. To be qualified for that job, you would have had to have a master's degree, and you would have to have a counseling license, and I had neither. And so I applied for the job, and I didn't know if they would let me have the job, but I interviewed, and come to find out, in that year, something new had been created, which is called the Qualified Mental Health Professional. If you have been working a certain amount of years in counseling or social work, and you have certain college hours from your degree, if you have met all those qualifications, you can qualify for something called the Qualified Mental Health Professional, which I qualified for. So they were able to hire me at the same salary as a person with a master's degree and license and everything like that, because I qualified for the mental health professional. And so where you don't see a way, there is a way. So don't let those things stop you. So as I was working that job, I began to have kind of this vision of what I wanted to do, which was YouTube. And that became something that was born out of fun, because during the pandemic and things like that, I had what I would call like a spiritual awakening. And in that time, I wrote a book about my twin flame journey and how all these things happen. This was a passion project. This was something that, brought me to life, brought me, on fire. And I was literally just having fun writing this book. And when I first put out my first YouTube videos, which you can go back and watch on my channel, I was just laying in bed talking. Like, it was just something that I liked to do. It wasn't something I was trying to make money at. It wasn't something that I thought would be a job. I had no idea about any of that. It was just having fun. And so I would put out a video here and there sporadically. I didn't even have internet at the time at my home. I'd have to go to McDonald's to upload these videos. I lived in a very remote little cabin off the lake at the time. And so that YouTube channel was born from that. But as I began working more and more in my serious mental health job, I began to see that I had written this book, and then I had the yearning to write some journals. And so I created my first journal, the School of Scarlett Journal. And I was, talking to people on YouTube through YouTube videos, and people were reaching out to me asking for one-on-one sessions. And so suddenly this job basically found me, because I have been counseling for so long. I would take on these clients, and I had clients. I think I only had like 100 followers, and I was already having one-on-one sessions with people. By the time I had 500 followers, I had already created my School of Scarlett on a platform called Teachable, and I had created my first course. And when I created my first course and put it out there, I was still working in the Serious Mental Health Center. I didn't know if anybody would sign up for the course. I didn't know how it would go. And I knew that I had a goal of having about 10 people in my course in order for it to be, since it was a group setting, to be like a small intimate group, but big enough that, it would be still a good course. And one person signed up, the other person signed up, and before you knew it, I had the 10. And I capped it off, and I did my first course, which was the unconditional course. I absolutely loved this course. I had so much fun doing it. So that's another pointer for you. You want to be in having fun, because the ultimate job, your dream job that you have, is not going to feel like work. It's going to feel like fun. It's just going to feel like you're doing something you wouldn't care if you got paid for or not. But in this case, I started to get paid for it. So I began to see that. And then at the same time, I was working in the Serious Mental Health Center when some horrible things began to happen where my safety was at risk. One thing happened where my safety was at risk. Then another thing happened. And it became so serious that something was alerting me. Even my nervous system was telling me it's time to go. And I think I even intuitively felt that word. It's time to go. And I wanted to stay a little bit longer, because at the time Another interesting thing that happened was that there was a really big need for mental health professionals after COVID, because there were so many mental health issues that had, sprung up. So they were paying us stipends, they were paying us extra, and so I had all this extra money. So it was kind of keeping me there because of the money as well. And with that money, this is another pointer to you, I invested that back into myself, into my YouTube channel. I purchased the things that you see in my studio, like my chair, my backgrounds, my mics, so many different things I purchased with that. I purchased a lot of things for my kitchen, which I also have a home studying channel. And during this time, all that extra money I was putting back into myself. So you want to invest in the version that you are becoming. And that's what I was doing. So that's another big thing with manifestation. You have to invest in that version of you who you are becoming. And you have to know who you're becoming. So when people would ask me, like one time I went to a nail salon around this time and someone asked me, what do you do for work? I let them know I was an author. I let them know that I have online courses. And I was still working in mental health, in that mental health center. But I had this new identity of myself, of who I was now, or becoming. And so I had no other way but to be pulled into that new identity that I was. So when you have alignment, when you are going towards your manifestation, you're actually being pulled to something new that you are becoming. And so you're energized by it. It's manifesting easily. And so that's what was happening then. But anyhow, I began to feel these things in my body during this time of danger. And I had to really choose myself, finally choose myself. I had been choosing myself time and time again in a lot of jobs that I left because they didn't align to me, but this time was the final straw. I was called to choose myself and leave that job completely and not look back. That was kind of scary because at the time, again, I had a lot of money coming in from this job. So I put in my resignation. They didn't want to accept it. They wanted to give me some other circumstances that they thought were safer. And I went home with it. I was again kind of in my heart torn. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do here? I have to choose myself. So even though I didn't have a whole lot of promise in my YouTube and the courses, I had some things going, but I still only had like 500 followers and one course that didn't pay anywhere near what I was paying at or getting paid at the mental health center. But I chose myself. I went back and I let them know I was done. My safety was at risk. This had been happening not just in this center. Throughout my careers, my safety had been at risk working in the mental health field. And my health was at risk a lot of times. I was always sick. I would get the cold a lot. Things would happen. Working with kids, I would get sick with different things. And so I left this job and I moved into YouTube. I moved into what I call my dream job now. And I haven't even been sick since I've left that job, which was now 4 or 5 years ago. I don't ever get sick. My energy is up. I feel more youthful. I can dress, do the things that I want to do. I've always dreamt of being a stay-at-home mom. I'm essentially a stay-at-home mom. I get to do so many different things and share it with the world as well. I have another channel where I share things that I do on my homestead. I like to live close to the land. I like to cook. I like to do all of those things, and I get to share those at the same time making money. So it doesn't feel like work at all. It's literally play. Talking to you, I'm probably going to be on YouTube for the rest of my life because I enjoy it so much. It doesn't matter if I get paid or not. And the courses and the connections that I make, I'm truly honored to work with people, and it fulfills me and the other so much. And along this journey, I continue to grow as well. So this is how I manifested my dream job. If you have been listening along the way, you have heard little tidbits, little pointers of how I did this. If you didn't hear them, go back and listen to this video. You're going to hear throughout each step different things that you're going to want to keep in mind as you are manifesting your journey. But wherever you find yourself now, even if it is a 9-to-5 job that you hate, find where you can be grateful. And then also find where you can become the version that you want to be. Start investing in yourself. Start seeing yourself as the job or the person that you want to be. And you will begin to be pulled and manifested into that direction. And before you know it, you're going to wake up and you're going to be working in something that doesn't feel like work at all. You're going to be provided for. Everything that you need will show up in one way or another. It will take some trust, but that is the whole thing about manifestation. You truly have to believe. And once you believe, those things begin to show up in your reality. So again, it's not a coincidence that you landed here on this channel, that you watched this video to the end. If you watched this video to the end, that is very powerful, and it just signals that you are moving towards that right here and now. And so before you know it, you will have your dream job. So if you have a dream job in mind for yourself, comment down below what it is. If you heard a step, a pointer throughout this video that you're going to go ahead and implement into your life, comment what that is down below. I would love to hear it, and I'm sure others would love to see it as well. And if you like this video, if you learned something from it, give me a thumbs up, share it with other people. And if you are new here, I hope that you will subscribe. I am putting out creator codes, and this is one of them. And I've put out about 3 videos now before this one, and they're all creator codes of how to manifest in different areas of your life. If you would like to go deeper with me, because essentially through these videos, I only share about like 1% of the information that I could be giving you. In my courses, I share about 40%. And on my one-on-one sessions, I share 80 to 90 to 100% with you. So what you're hearing here and now is just the surface level, but it's enough to get you going. Again, you just have to choose one of these pointers to help manifest what you want now. But if you'd like to go deeper with me and really get into that, really meaty knowledge, the knowledge that really takes you taking a step forward for me to be able to share that with you. Not everybody's ready for this information. But if you are ready for it, I encourage you to reach out to me at schoolofscarlett.com, or School of Scarlett, that's my website. But if you'd like to enroll in this program, reach out to me at my email address, which is schoolofscarlett@gmail.com. I am enrolling now for a course we're beginning August 27th. This is the Manifestor Creator Codes, where we're going to go deep into how to manifest. And I'm going to really be sharing with you the deepest knowledge around this subject so that you can live the life of your dreams. Okay, thank you again so much for tuning in today. I love you all. I will catch you on our next video.